Yeah, I would say a few things. So one of the risks of personal development, or let's just call it more broadly self-help, is that it can very easily become self-infatuation or self-obsession. And the counterbalance to that, the bet that offsets it is, dun, 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 it's very simple. Relationships, really doubling down, tripling down on relationships. We are evolved to be a social species. And whenever you are in isolation, physically or simply in thought loops in your own head, that tends to catalyze or worsen tremendously any type of instability or OCD or depression or anxiety or fill in the blank psychiatric condition. So my policies, which were already in place last time we spoke, that I have really continued to invest into, are doing a past year review every year, looking at my top relationships that are nourishing, energizing, energy in as opposed to energy out, and then blocking out time in advance for the entire year for extended periods of time with those people. Now, extended will depend on your circumstances. For me, that could be anywhere from a long weekend to a week, spending, say, 5 days in the wilderness in Montana with some of my oldest, closest friends, et cetera, et cetera. And that will do, not to denigrate therapy in any way, but sometimes talking more about your problems, if it were to solve all of your problems, would have worked already. And there's a place for talk therapy. There's a place for talk therapy, but it is not, nor does it need to be, the only tool in the toolkit. So simply spending time around your silly, dumb, amazing friends and laughing, whether it's around a bottle of wine or a meal or a campfire, really, really goes a long way. So that's one piece of it.
I'm curious, like you mentioned that in recent years, you've, at the top of every year, you kind of make a plan to see the people who, to use the cliche, fill your cup. Had you gone through a period like I did, where there was a certain amount of isolation or inattention to this lever?
Oh, for sure. And I think there were a few different reasons for that. I don't know if hindsight's 20/20, but I think it's easier to see from my vantage point now that, and it's a balancing act, because there's compulsive socializing because you are incredibly uncomfortable or afraid of being alone or with yourself.
Yes.
Right? So there's compulsive socializing to distract yourself, like protect yourself from yourself, which is problematic. And then there's compulsive isolation. And I would say I probably leaned far more towards the compulsive isolation. And there were two reasons for that. One was workaholism back in the day, for sure. And I just felt like I was more effective, able to produce more, able to focus on business, finances, whatever it might be, in isolation. And there might be some truth to that. Then I would say there was also this belief that I think at the time was really implicit. I don't think I explicitly grasped it, which was, and I've written this incredibly long essay that maybe I'll publish at some point, but we're talking about some of the dangers of self-help. And one of them is the following, which ties into what we're talking about and leaning towards isolation. This implicit belief, or explicit, that you need to work on yourself and fix yourself and quote unquote do the work, and then you'll be ready to interact with other people and have a significant relationship and engage with your family if that is an option or you want it to be an option, et cetera, et cetera. So in effect, the analogy that I've drawn for some friends is you want to play soccer, but first you're going to read all the textbooks and get a master's degree and PhD in soccer. And then you're going to practice dribbling and penalty shots and so on by yourself. And you want to become as perfect a player as possible by yourself before you ever actually get on the field and play the game of soccer. And you can start to believe that you're playing soccer by yourself. There's always more room for improvement. You're never going to be perfect. And if you get caught in that trap, which is the partial trap of self-help, you're always polishing this self, and it can become this real recursive, dangerous trap, this fixation on the self. And you never actually fucking play soccer. Like and at a point, you start to believe that you are, but you're not. You're simulating by yourself life, but not actually engaging with life. And I have, who knows, maybe this is a function of getting older. I don't think so necessarily, but for so many decades, I was interested in the cutting edge of everything. And I still am. But I've become interested equally in things that have lasted millennia or more than millennia.